Oh, sorry. Fearing what you'll have to give up. I couldn't think of anything worse than going on a diet. I think it's important for us to be flexible mentally. I'm not really into the right, wrong, healthy, unhealthy. It's very binary. It's very, kind of puts us into extremes. And that's what diet is for me. I think that we need to approach this saying, this isn't a diet. This is just, most of the time we're going to do what we need to do to keep our body, if you think about it like it's a car. You want to keep the engine in good health, so you're not going to put water into the engine. You're going to put petrol or diesel or whatever it needs to keep it going. So you want to look after this physical body. It's going to be on the planet for a number of years. So we want to look after it. So most of the time we're going to be looking after it. That's what we're going to be aiming for. But some of the time we want to let our hair down. So there are moments where it's really important, because we're human, we're multi-layered, we have an emotional state too that requires very different fuel. The bliss that you get from something really enjoyable that you love, that you look forward to, is really very important too. So I think that we can afford to be a lot more flexible around this idea of what we should and shouldn't be eating. And I think we need to also move away from this idea of having a cheat. I don't like this concept of having a cheat day or a cheat meal, because it makes you feel like you're doing something wrong. And there's nothing wrong with eating an enormous piece of carrot cake if that's what you really feel like, as long as you can do it as part of your some of the time food. The problem when we get into that diet mentality is we climb onto the wagon. You know this. We make a decision to do something. Oh, we always have to wait till Monday. We can't possibly start a diet on a Friday or a Saturday. So we wait till Monday because we know we're going to be very deprivation. We know we're going to be quite harsh with ourselves. And we're going to make sure that we do not eat the food that we shouldn't eat. So it becomes very punitive. And it also means that we try and aim for perfection, which is an absolutely pointless endeavor, because A, no one can ever be perfect, and B, it's very boring trying to be perfect. Well, it's boring to be perfect, but I don't think anyone really achieves that, not for a prolonged period. So you know what happens? You get on that bandwagon, or that diet wagon, and you do it all perfectly, and you can do it for only so long before you completely lose the plot, and then you throw the baby out with the bathwater. You totally binge because you're now going to the other extreme, and then you know you're going to have to start it all over again. But again, you're going to wait for another Monday, then you're going to get onto the wagon again, and you're going to be twice as strict with yourself. So it is an awful, awful cycle. It's vile. We don't want you ever doing that. So for me, I tend to, when I'm working with clients, is build in some of this stuff into their week. So I'll say to them, if a mate, let's say we start working on something today, and this evening your mate calls you up and says, hey, Thursday night, let's go and have a pizza and a beer, or a glass of wine, or whatever it is. And you think, oh, but I've just started this new diet. The point with this is to firstly say to your friend, yes, absolutely, I'm there. What you don't want to do is go with a long face knowing you're just going to have to order a green salad and a glass of water, because you know what's going to happen. You're just going to be watching every bite of that delicious, oily, cheesy, yummy pizza that goes into her mouth, and wishing you had a glass of wine in your hands or a beer in your hands. So it's just not worth it. So you're going to say yes. And then you know already ahead of time that that's going to be it's my let down my hair kind of moment. So I'm just going to enjoy those foods that evening. And then up until then, I'll just make sure I eat for my physical body. I'll consume healthful foods because I know it's coming. And you can do that multiple times in a week. The point is, you don't want to be on a diet. So Set it up so that you're flexible in your mind, you're flexible in your behavior, you can see your mates, you can do the things. Don't binge. No one's saying to you can't ever have a piece of carrot cake ever again, or a pizza and a beer. No one's saying that. You're not on a diet. So don't rebel against this idea of, oh, I can't have it. Have it. And just know it's part of your every now and then foods. We want you to take a gentle approach. I want to help you succeed, but in a gentle and very effective way, not in a perfect way. So the task I normally set my clients, and it's a hard one for many, is to stop aiming for perfection. Stop trying to get everything 100%. Just be okay with putting the effort in, and whatever happens, happens. Fearing resistance. Will I be able to withstand temptation? This is a big one for people because it goes to that first thing I spoke about where clients are not quite sure how motivated they should be because they're a bit reticent about committing to a process and they're worried about having to give stuff up. The thing is that there is a difference between, I think, between self-deprivation and self-discipline. And I think it's important to understand these two because let's say your goal is, I want to lose weight. I want to get into a smaller dress size. Let's say we want to go one size down, or yeah, let's stick to that because most of my clients tend to have a bit of a weight weight-related goal. So I want to move down a dress size. So I'm aware of what my long-term goal is, and I'm going to try and make sure that I see the supporting behaviors as important in order to get me to achieve success with this goal. So I stay as focused as I can be without being deprivational. In other words, without becoming miserable in the process. Let me give you an example. I would often be invited to events, maybe launches or just meeting type things where they might have eats as well. What I would do is usually I would go not starving. I would have something to snack on beforehand so that if I don't end up eating, I'm okay for that event. But when I arrived, I would have a look at the snacks on offer because if they were amazing, then I was going to eat them and I was going to feast on them. But if they weren't great, then I would skip it. So on the one hand, what I didn't want to do is see some amazing foods out and then have to sit on my hands and think, oh, I can't eat these. And that's the deprivation part. I can't bear that. So I don't want to ever put anyone in a position where they think, oh, I'm not allowed to have something. We're not doing a diet here. We're doing a no diet. So we're working with this concept of flexibility. So I walk in, I see fantastic eats, I think, yes, I'm going to have those. Great. I do have my goal in mind, but I also know that I'm letting my hair down. And remember, we want to look at this idea of what you do some of the time is not going to affect you, whereas what you do most of the time is really what's going to move you towards your goals. So it's okay to let your hair down every now and then. We live in a world full of the most delicious, not typically healthy foods, certainly not healthy for our bodies necessarily. They can be very healthy for a moment of bliss and enjoyment and love and all the rest of it when it comes to food. But it's okay to let your hair down every now and then. So see the difference between what is going to feel like deprivation, or what is going to be me implementing self-discipline because I'm not really too caught up in this moment and I know that my end goal is very important to me. Will it change my relationship with those close to me? I think this is probably a good consideration because, for example, let's say you wanted to reduce the amount that you drink alcohol-wise. But if you're the party animal, So in other words, every time you go out with your mates, you're the one who leads or is the big bubbly life and soul of the party. If you're not going to be drinking in the future, will that affect your friends? Will it affect how they see you? Will it affect what sort of time you have going out? That's just one example, but it is something worth reflecting on. Will I still be me when I've changed my habits or my life? I think this goes really to the point before, where if I know myself to be a gregarious, outgoing, spontaneous person, and that changes because I'm not doing what I used to do, will I still be who I was? Also worth considering. Will others make it difficult for me to succeed? Well, you know how this goes. You head out, someone says, what would you like to drink? You say, oh no, I'm okay, thanks. Oh no, come on, we're out, have a drink. No, I'm good. Come on, just one drink. We've all been there. So that's where a bit of sabotage can happen. You need to prepare for that. I think what's a very useful idea, and it's a task that I put here, is to express the support you need from your friends and your family. Tell them that you are needing their support. So maybe you warn your mates and say, look, for the next 3 months, I'm not doing it. So if we go out, please don't put pressure on me, because otherwise I just won't come out in the future. So just set it up. If your husband sits down next to you on the couch and says, do you want a bar of chocolate? Or your partner sits down to you, do you want a bar of chocolate? Or he breaks or she breaks out the chocolate. That's not great for you, because if the temptation is part of what we're worried about, then we want to take the temptation away. So just ask them could they possibly hide the chocolate, and then maybe if they want to eat it when they're not in your company. Fearing the journey. So as I said, if your end goal is a big one, it can be quite overwhelming to look ahead to that and say, well, this is what I want to achieve. So breaking it down into smaller, more manageable components is a much better idea, I think. We want to look at short-term goals, which are your daily and weekly goals. So they might be prepare one really healthy meal a day for the next month. Or it might be drink more water and make a good lunch for taking to work. Don't rely on takeout. You can think of any number of goals that you might want to bring in. And these short-term goals will be the things that support your medium-term goals. And your medium-term goals are anything up to 3 or 12 months. Now, that seems like a very broad time frame, but I will often ask clients to think about a long-term goal being somewhere like 2 years in the distance, a year, 2 years. As we get older, it's harder to change our physicality, our behavior, everything, because we've been around for a longer time. So everything is more set. We're more set in our ways. So I always think it's worth thinking longer rather than shorter, and then building this, and think about how long you've been doing what you've been doing for. If you've been not exercising for most of your life, it's going to take a long time to build a really consistent, well thought out program that will actually eventually get you to achieve that. You want it to be a slower process rather than a faster process, because slow and steady, as we know, wins the race. Long-term goals are the end goal. So what you would do is you create your short-term goals, your weekly, daily goals, to support the medium-term goals. So let's take 3 months. We're going to set up, it's always good to document this. So you set up a document that allows you to bring in these goals that are going to support us on a weekly basis. And go wild with the kinds of things that you think because you can test and experiment a little bit with this. It might be very easy to add enough water to your day, but it might be harder to change every lunchtime to a decent, healthy nutritional meal. So you might want to choose the things that allow you to make the change, make it stick, and then you can feel good about it. And the minute you feel good about having achieved it, you'll be much more motivated to do the next change. So you take what you need in the short-term goals and you build something so that by the time you hit 3 months, you have a little goal there too. Maybe that 3-month goal is, I should be exercising 3 times a week at gym. I should be eating a nutritional, healthy lunch that I take to work every day by the time I hit 3 months. Maybe I've dropped a certain amount of weight, or let's rather talk in dress size or pant size or whatever it is that you're measuring. And then that's your 3-month mark. And then you can do the same thing again for the next 3 months. So you're just building maybe 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 of these medium-term goals with the short-term goals supporting it. And then again, with the medium-term goals, you're going to do the same thing with your long-term goal. If your long-term goal is to drop 3 dress sizes, run a marathon, and whatever else, then you need to have your medium-term goals look at each point of 3 months. They're going to be getting you closer to that end goal. So we've already said that by month 3, maybe we'll have dropped a dress size. We'll be going to gym 3 times a week. Then you know if you jump to your next 3-month mark, what is the goal there? Maybe it's to drop a second lot of dress size. Maybe it's lunch and dinner and employing intermittent fasting, for example. Then what will happen 3 months later? So you're building it in increments, and your short-term goals are supporting those increments. Spend some time thinking about your goal. This is very important. If you don't have a goal, how do you know what you're doing on a daily basis? Write it down, record it, have a look at it often so you know whether you're on track or not. I love this Mark Twain quote: "A habit cannot be tossed out the window. It must be coaxed down the stairs a step at a time." It's so true. As I've said, you can't just change behavior overnight. You can try. You might get it right once or twice because the momentum is there and the motivation is there. But if you don't coax it down, most clients I know just throw it out of the window. Change. This is the big one. Making change stick. What exactly do you want to change? How do we increase your chances of success? I'm going to give you some ideas of what my clients tend to do in order to sustain the changes they make. And then we're going to assess once again how motivated you are, because perhaps that will have changed with the knowledge you have at the end of the session. So I've suggested that you create an action plan. That would be your short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. That's your action plan. And then you're going to think about those short-term goals, which are the daily or weekly habits that you are wanting to start to change. So you want to list those changes. So it might be, I want to eat more healthily, I want to drink more water, I want to drink less coffee or less tea or take less sugar, I want to go to gym more, I want to have a healthier relationship with my partner or my children. You then need to assess what each change relates to. So is it diet? Is it exercise? Is it your thought patterns, relationship, sleep, breathing, etc.? There are lots of different areas in your life that you might want to look at adjusting. Then you need to assess the level that's required for each intervention. So for example, do you want to see some change to your thought processes, to your perception of the world, to the way you think about yourself? Is it purely physical? Do you want to see change to your body? You need to consider what you need for each of those changes. So if it's an emotional change, for example, in terms of your perception of things, or you want to improve your relationship with people close to you, then do you need to see a therapist? And if so, where would you get the contact details for someone recommended? Are there supplements that you need? Do you need to change your sleeping environment, and therefore do you need some bits and pieces in order to do that? So you need to assess it and then understand what is required from a tools perspective. There's nothing worse than wanting to change but not having the means to do it. How do we increase your chances of success? As I've said, you need to give yourself time. So I do think that longer rather than shorter periods are better for achieving goals. So just rather too much than too little, although you don't want to make it too far in the distance that you lose motivation. Choose one change per level of intervention. If it's emotional, for example, just going to see a practitioner, a therapist regularly will be sufficient. If it's a dietary change, just adding more fat might be sufficient. So think about, you don't want to take too much on at once. Plan the changes before you start the changes. As I've said, that's if you need specific aspects, tools, products, you want to be prepared for that. And then practice and practice and practice. I need to tell you a story on this practice thing. I just still do, but I went through a period where I do a lot of dry skin brushing. So every time I get into the shower, I would dry skin brush. It's a great habit, great habit. We'll talk about it later in the detox session. It's a really great habit. So it's just taking a body brush and circularly brushing the body up towards the heart if you're below it, and then down towards the heart if you're above it. It gets rid of dead cells, it stimulates circulation, it causes a response in the tone of the skin. There's lots of reasons you would want to do it. But the point of me telling you is that I did it for a very long period. Just every time I walked into the shower, I did it. Every time I walked into the bathroom, before a shower or a bath, I would do it. And then what happened is I moved, and my body brush got packed somewhere else. And it was months before, in my new place, it was months before I realized, oh, hang on, I haven't been body brushing. So I had to go and find the brush and put it out, and then remind myself every time I walked into the bathroom, see the brush, go, oh yes, I need to brush. So then I would start again, and lo and behold, I'd do it for maybe 2 days, and then I would find an excuse. So I'd walk into the bathroom, then I go, oh, I'm in a rush, I've got a client now, I'll do it tomorrow. And before I knew it, I didn't think about it again. So another week would go by, and then I was like, oh, got to remember that bloody body brush. So then I'd have to set myself up to remember it again. And that just was such a great reminder of how hard it is to change. You have to practice. If you want to change something, you got to practice it, practice it, practice it, practice it. Because it's the practicing it that eventually makes it stick. And this is the point, really. Because remember, the messages we received as kids were given to us over and over and over and over. So our subconscious heard them over and over and over and over. It's not like you heard it once and then boom. It was the repetition that was what set that neural network up. So same thing here. If you want to get a thing right, practice the thing. It won't happen otherwise. And don't let setbacks equal failure. You definitely, like I did with the body brushing, you're definitely not going to get it right the first time. It's very normal. It's very human. It's okay. It doesn't have to equate to failure. And recognize and celebrate your successes, because that's a thing. When you change something, it's a thing. And you must acknowledge that. It's very important. My clients, my successful clients, have had a whole lot of things in common. It's been quite interesting over these 30 years to understand this process very intimately and watch it happen with clients. And these are typically the clients that I really appreciate working with, are those who arrive with some awareness, for example, of the problem. So they're not just coming to me saying, oh, I just want to lose weight for a wedding or whatever's some event happening in the future. So they are aware that there are things that they would like to change. They have a good attitude about it. So they're not looking for someone to tell them what to do. They are going to they're motivated enough to want to change something about their lives. They do take intentional action, so there's no doubt that they are doing something very specific to achieve the goal that they have now decided they want to set themselves. They will actively seek knowledge and support. So whether that's with someone like me, or maybe it's reading, because there's a lot of information out there. They might be researching stuff. They might be doing both. They might be seeing multiple people, not just me, for example, with the dietary work. There are many different facets of a person's life that they may require help with. And so what these clients were very good at was seeking the help that they needed. They take responsibility for themselves. So this is not about them saying, oh, just give me a diet plan and tell me what to do. I get many requests. I have no interest in I've never done that, and I never will. I'm an educator. I want to educate you to the point where you don't need anyone else's help. You don't need an expert to tell you what you should be doing, because you already know it. You have this knowledge. You're going to become instinctive and intuitive. So taking clients that were successful took total responsibility for themselves. They asked me for guidelines. They wanted my help, my support while they went through the process. Obviously, I held them by the hand for the process, but I didn't spoon feed them, excuse the pun. I did not spoon feed them in terms of saying, oh, you must have this, and you must do that, you must do the other. They worked it out, but they were also equally happy to say, you know what, this didn't work. That's my bad. Let me try this. They were happy to experiment, and they enjoyed the experience too. So I think a lot of them got a lot of pleasure out of understanding that they were able to change, seeing the change in themselves, and then seeing it stick. And that's the best part, I guess, is when you get it right. And it's very awesome for me to see it too, because it's just a lovely, it's almost like a light bulb moment when someone goes, oh, I can actually do that. So how motivated are you? If you assess yourself now, can you see any change in that number? You might not, and perhaps the motivation will grow as you become more confident and you see some changes and you feel those changes. But maybe your number has changed. Maybe for you, having heard why it's so difficult, and maybe some of the ways that you can actually find to change more successfully, has that changed your number? Hopefully you're up in the high area, somewhere between 8 and 10. But if not, you'll get there. Don't stress about it. I'll leave you with this Socrates quote. The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. It's on building that new superhighway, that neural pathway in the brain, and just ignoring that other one, not focusing on it, not giving it any tools to repair, but just building that new one as an alternate. Here are your takeaway tips, which will probably be useful to stick up on your fridge or somewhere where you can access them, just to remind yourself of what we covered today. Become aware of your habitual thoughts, very important. Practice your new habits. Tune into the feeling stuff during your important tasks. So become aware of create the hooks that will motivate you to do those things. Stop thinking like a perfectionist. Ask for support. So make sure that you express your needs. Be patient. Be selective. Plan and practice. And make change for the right reasons. The right reasons being for you, as opposed to your doctor says you need to do X, or your partner or spouse says you need to do Y, or your kids say, Mom. So do it for the right reasons. And most importantly, enjoy it, because you will learn a lot about yourself. You will amaze yourself. You will inspire yourself. And you will ultimately feel very proud of yourself. I hope this has been useful, and I will see you again shortly.